Think back to when you were in elementary school or middle school. Did you have a difficult time convincing your parents or guardian that you were sick enough or hurt enough to stay home from school? Well, when I think of it, I think back to a time where I already had a broken arm. My room was a mess because I was a preteen and I never cleaned up after myself. I was one of those kids who would clean their room before family was coming over, and it would take me the entire day to clean it. Well, one time I hadn't cleaned my room, and I tripped over a stereo, and I used that broken arm to catch myself from falling. Oh my gosh, it hurt so bad, but my stepdad wasn't buying it. He didn't believe I was in as much pain as I said I was, and he gave me an ibuprofen and an ice pack and told me to suck it up. Well, when it came time to get my cast off, I knew the second that I saw my arm that something wasn't right. Turns out I re-broke it so badly that I needed surgery. I think back to a time where I had that broken arm, and I'm like, to convince him that I was in as much pain as I was really, really hard to do. Maybe you can relate to that story that I just told you. There's all kinds of ways that we try to deal or not deal with difficult or painful situations. The problem is that you're going to face some tough stuff in high school. And even if you're in the small percentage that happens to make it through high school without facing it, it will eventually happen in life. We all deal with it at some point or another. Today we're talking about the difficult stuff that comes in the form of loss. When we lose something or someone, when we suffer loss, which we all inevitably will, it's natural for us to experience grief. Grief is a deep sadness that comes with the loss of something or someone you care about. We all deal with those emotions differently. Some of us get them out, and some of us hold it in. However we react, most of us at some point or another will ask, where's God? That's what we want to talk about for the next few minutes. In the first 4 books of the New Testament, there are intricate narratives, both firsthand accounts and interviews with eyewitnesses about the life and teachings of Jesus. One of Jesus' closest friends was a guy named John. John was most likely a teenager like you when he started following Jesus. And one dramatic event that John remembered and recorded about Jesus' life starts like this. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. So the sister sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. One of Jesus' best friends came down with a major sickness and things were not looking good. It continues. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in their loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him. But Mary stayed back at home. Jesus was late. He missed it. The sisters suffered a loss. Their brother was gone. And Mary was not about it. And she had something to tell Jesus. She said, Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Martha decided to confront Jesus. In fact, she went face to face with him. Halfway down the road, as soon as she saw him, she told him exactly what she thought. Jesus, where were you? Why did it take you so long? I thought you loved him. How could you let this happen? Have you ever heard of the phrase, you're putting a Band-Aid on it, right? The idea is that we're just covering up the pain or the problem and not dealing with the root issue. We do that with our grief sometimes, don't we? We stuff it down, we cover it up, or we act like we're fine when we're not. But that's not how Martha interacted with Jesus, right? She didn't. She ripped that Band-Aid off. She said, if you had shown up, Jesus, this would not have happened. Wow, is that even allowed? Can you talk to Jesus that way? Would he lose his temper? Would he lecture her? Would he tell her to get it together and just trust God? No, it's not even close. Don't miss this. When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. Here's a massively important thing for you and I to remember. Jesus is with us in our grief. Whatever loss we're going through, Jesus is right there feeling it with us. God is not absent. God didn't cause it. God isn't telling us to trust that everything will work out just fine. No. God is close to us and walking with us. Lazarus' story doesn't end there. His family eventually witnessed a miracle when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Jesus didn't just show up on the scene and immediately fix everything. He didn't brush aside the sadness or the anger. He didn't bypass the hurt. He felt and grieved with them. This lines up with what we learn about God in the Old Testament during a particularly challenging time in Israel's history. In the middle of their loss, this is the message that God gives the author to deliver to Israel. Even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I have made you. I will carry you. I will sustain you. I will rescue you. With whom will you compare me or count me equal? God promises to sustain us, which means that God will help us carry the grief that we're holding on to. In light of all of this, here are a couple things that I would like for you to understand. These aren't things for you to do as much as they're things for you to know. First is this: accept the fact that loss is going to happen. This is what Jesus told his disciples. In this world, you will have trouble. If pain equates to us thinking that God isn't good, then God will never be good to us. Why? Because difficult things will always happen. But Jesus didn't stop there. It says, but take heart, I have overcome the world. God is bigger than what happens to us. God can actually grow our faith through tough times. The second thing, acknowledge what we can experience more of God's goodness when we experience that loss. Because God is good and feels with us and carries our grief. We can actually experience God in a deeper way when tough times come our way. Not only that, we can actually draw closer to the people God brings into our lives. Jesus said this: blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. When we mourn, God will comfort us and provide other people who will comfort us as well. Remember, Jesus is with us in our grief.